Yo, how's it going everyone? So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the general frameworks that I work from when I look at accounts, why it's the best way in my opinion to look at accounts, and sort of how to come to the conclusions that we come to so you guys can test on your own and have accurate understanding of what's going on. Because typically what happens is people scale and then they find out, oh my god, we're not getting good results, and then they descale or they think their test didn't work. And there's a lot more things that are going on inside of the ecosystem that people might misunderstand. So, people that are chasing ROAS, for example, run into the issue of hitting a wall and you can't break past that wall because you don't have the fundamental understandings of how a business functions and how marketing works as a whole. So this is what every single large business owner that I know of is doing this, as well as that they're not my clients, people that I'm consulting, that I've just hopped in to help, people in the school community that we're teaching, pretty much just everything around the block that we've had case studies from that are on the CProGrowth channel or has used this type of framework. And I think that this is something that is missing in the space. And so I want to give you guys some more understanding as to how overall accounts are managed and how to look at them and make sure that you're making the right decisions. So if you did not see my previous video on how to pretty much like the journey from when I was a beginner to when I started to understand this stuff a lot more and work with larger accounts, go check it out because it'll kind of explain some of this as well too. But the biggest thing that I see a lot of people run into the issue of is attribution. And we've talked about it many times before, and I want to make it even more simple. I want to simplify this even more when it comes to this, because I know that there's a lot of business owners and people that maybe are not necessarily looking at this the way that we need to look at this when it comes to marketing. So I'm gonna give a scenario here where we're just running Google and Meta ads, and I'm going to also have my general marketing tracking sheet here. Now, when it comes to the marketing tracking sheet, I'm going to assume that you guys already somewhat know what these terms are. So like obviously Google spend, Facebook spend total, traffic, website rev, new customer rev, website MER, conversion rate, new customers, NCAC, NMER, orders, CAC, and percentage of new buyers. NMER can also be AMER. It just kind of depends. Now, the same exact principle applies to lead gen. It's just a little bit different. So instead of it going on like a basis of NMER and MER, you're more so on the basis of like conversion rate based on different stages of the funnel, and then the actual close rate, and then the actual cost per sold lead when it comes to that equation. So same exact model, just a little bit different visualization of it. So the first thing that I want to cover is how to MMM. So marketing mix model. So what is that? So we'll go over that first. So marketing mix modeling is really just the understanding of what is going on inside of your ecosystem of your business, what kind of marketing channels are driving the most revenue. So we're trying to build the understanding of what the model looks like, and then use that information to then better assess how we can scale the business and what actual things like would attribute, or we can attribute to better performance on a P&L perspective. So simple words of wisdom that I would say when it comes to this is, in essence, MMM is just, okay, we have these two channels, I scale up this channel, what happens to these numbers down here, right? So okay, we scaled this channel up and these numbers here got better. Okay, sweet, let's keep scaling up this channel. Okay, we scaled it up further. Wait a minute, numbers didn't get better. We gave it enough time, we gave the lag time. Okay, let's scale back down to the ratio that we're at previously of maybe like a 70-30 ratio, 70% of spends in Meta, 30% in Google. Now when we scale, we're gonna scale both of these up together. So they're keeping the same ratio. Then we'll see, for example, a potentially better acquisition when it comes to the marketing mix, right? We're gonna see a better form of efficiency, because if we were just to scale Meta, in theory, this is all in theory, that we scaled Meta too much, and then it essentially just broke part of the funnel and became less efficient. Now, this is kind of the baseline. This is sort of what the, I guess, easy, very, very baseline level of understanding is. Now, when we talk about the external sides of this, right? So, oops, let me do this. Should be able to just duplicate this. There we go. So when we talk about these areas over here, right, the skill on both sides, I guess you can say, of the spectrum, we have, I guess, the more logical side and then the more creative side when it comes to that. So I'll cover that in just a moment. These sides are obviously where the majority of talent is going to be, but the basic fundamental understanding of, I won't even take on a client. I don't know any large agencies that will, or any good agencies that will take on a client. that is not tracking these metrics down here. So get that out of your head. ROAS is like super old school, not even, properly, you can't even attribute properly, causes more confusion. And it's best to just simplify this process as much as possible. So one of the things, and I'll give you guys some of the tactics that we use over here. So as we, understand, okay, marketing mix modeling or media mix modeling, whatever you want to call it, is really just the understanding of what's driving these numbers to do what we want. So once we have this test figured out, so we're not looking at attribution, we're not looking at any of that, we're just looking at cost, what's the ratio, what happens. Now we get in the scenario of, okay, let's say that I scaled Meta and it didn't work. Okay, I decreased Meta and it didn't work. Okay, I, scaled both of them up. Okay, it didn't work. Okay, I scaled Google up. Okay, it didn't work, right? And so we're going through all these different scenarios of testing scale, and we're not able to break past that barrier. So then that leads us to the next stage in this process, which is, like I said, where all the skill comes in. So you can, like I said, pick either way to kind of start. It really just depends on, the way that you think and the way that you want to sort of, gauge what is specifically happening in the account. The way that I like to do first is just based on what I already know, which is more on the tech stack side of it and the cold and warm tactics that you can do inside of the account in the first place. I would say that this is probably more impactful from a get this done first, because you can have the creativity figured out already and the offer really well, but you might have the wrong tactics, which is still causing these numbers to get worse. So I like to push into this side first, actually, now that I'm thinking about it more. So anyways, when it comes to the data systems or the way that you're looking at data, the way that you're feeding back data for the algorithms, is we have these two different services, Audience OS and Blotout, that we use for pumping in the right information back into the platform. Now, very important, this would be considered a cold tactic. Now, what do I mean by cold tactic? Cold tactic is pretty much a way where you can essentially push the algorithm to go after more cold users versus warm users, right? So we have warm users here, or cold or warm tactics here, cold tactics here. The algorithm is still going to prioritize warm tactics, right? Because whenever we use conversion-based bidding, this is something that we constantly are going to have to battle. And the goal here is to have as many cold tactics as possible to better outweigh the warm nature of the algorithm when it comes to that. And by warm nature, I mean that the algorithm is going to prioritize the easiest people to convert, which are typically repeat users or bottom of funnel conversions, because it looks better and it makes them make more money, because people think, oh, Google's, getting all this attribution, the ROAS is amazing, I'm gonna push more money at Google, and then it doesn't work and you're like, what the heck happened? So this skill over here, a cold tactic example would be setting the TROAS to 40% instead of 300%. The reason why that'd be a cold tactic is because we're allowing the algorithm to push further into the unknown when it comes to prospecting and not restricting it with a TROAS bid. Now, this isn't a be-all end-all. I'm not giving you guys the golden rule. I'm just giving you the cold tactics that you can use to push it in the right direction based on the numbers that you're seeing over here. That's why this is the skill when it comes to that. There's no real golden rule. It's more so just a higher chance of success with cold tactics than a standard account. The other thing as well too, when it goes back to the data stack with Audience OS or Blotout, is because we want to build the algorithm towards new customers, and we want to build the algorithm towards first click new customers typically. And so this would also be considered a cold tactic, right? We're pushing more cold data into the account for the algorithm to optimize for. Therefore, we end up getting conversions and the numbers look better. Therefore, we're impacting more top of funnel versus bottom of funnel advertising, which is how you grow a business in the first place, right? We're going back to basics, right? Top of funnel grows the business, not bottom of funnel. And so when you're looking at this, you say, okay, sweet. So let's say that I have all of these things figured out. I have all the cold tactics. I'm, not scaling performance max because that's a warm tactic typically. And I have, for example, first click new customers that I'm optimizing for. Perfect. We have a larger ice cube per se when it comes to cold tactics. The issue though is that we're still leveraging conversion-based bidding. So we will never be 100% cold. We will still have warm traffic. And what I mean by warm traffic is that could be return customers or people further down the funnel that are new customers. We're still going to run into that issue. So, and this could be independent on each individual channel. So we might have a scenario where Google is actually really cold and not really that warm, whereas Meta is actually the opposite, where it's actually way warmer than it is cold. And so understanding the different features to look for, the different types of things in an account to look for, like a super high T ROAS, very restricted bidding, bottom of funnel type of ads, those types of things you want to be on the lookout for, and that will help you break past the issue of potentially running into an inefficiency whenever you scale one of these channels and you notice, wait a minute, we actually are running this warm tactic, I need to change this. Now, I would recommend that you do this in the first place before you even, do the testing per se, because we want to make sure that things are set up properly. However, I know that not everyone is going to understand specifically what are cold and warm tactics, so I'm kind of doing it a little bit of a different way here. This is kind of the way that I learned it and the way that John learned it. Okay, so this part over here, this is when things get a little bit more complicated. So this part is, I would say, the more traditional marketer, the area that I would say if you're a business owner or if you're someone that is building funnels, you are probably very, very, very familiar with this side of the equation. Now, this is also going to be most likely more impactful for if you're lead generation, whereas I would say that this is an area where e-com struggles mainly. I'm not saying that that is the case for everyone. I'm just saying in my experience, I've noticed that this area is typically what lacks first from an e-com side, whereas lead gen, this area is the main focus majority of the time, because you're not necessarily advertising across channels as much typically with lead generation when it comes to overall spend. You're mainly on Google, you're capturing demand, and you're obviously trying to scale that up. So what is the skill over here? What is the creative, what's a creative example? What's sort of the logic behind this? So this comes down to your offer, your messaging, and just the overall feel of your branding of your business in the first place. So this could be something small, like for example, and a really obvious one is, let's say that you run shopping ads and you're in Google and you have your product versus another product that is serving a very similar purpose. If you have less reviews, you're probably not going to be as efficient as someone that has more reviews because it doesn't look as good, right? The branding is not as strong. And so this would be something on the creative side to locate this and say, okay, reviews are not there. Let's figure out how we can get reviews up. Okay, perfect. Checklist done. Move on to the next thing. And this area is typically where you see the most improvement, but also the highest risk. So another thing as well too that a lot of people like to do in this area is on the Facebook side, they'll test different offers. So it might be a scenario where if you are trying to get more new customers, you might say first order, you get 20% off, just give us your email, and they'll try to retarget you and then convert you. You might have another, one that's geared towards trying to get more new customers, and you're looking at it from the perspective of maybe it's like a joint kind of thing, right? So if there is a workout supplement or something of that nature, and it's like buy one, get one free, or send it to another address, you can maybe encourage someone else to then work out with you or in the same scenario. And that could be a buy one, get one free, which then encourages that person that got it for free to then come in and purchase some of your products if they like what you have in the first place. So it's kind of like a free trial without a free trial. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of do this on the creative side, but those are kind of some ideas to kind of give you a feel for what is typically the case of what is, what can be tested on the creative side over here, or the not a straightforward side when it comes to that. So when you have these things dialed in, and like I said, this could be landing pages, this could be creative ad copy, your offer, what's being shown first inside of the shopping ad, what type of product is being pushed, different bundles. This is like I said, we can go on and on and on and on and on about this, but it really is, I would say, the main conversations that I have with clients is working in this space because we've already figured out all this other stuff. And this is typically accounts that are, like I said, in the 7, 8, 9 figure range. So if you are in this scenario, work on getting this sheet first. I'll have a link in the description for it. And then as well as, I would say, be very, very careful on breaking away from third-party attribution tools, because things might look worse temporarily and then it might get better. There's a lot of lag time that's involved in this because you're filling up more top of funnel typically if you are optimizing towards cold new customers, which then obviously grows your overall P&L to the point where you are in a way better scenario and you're not hitting scaling walls as much. Because when you're scaling with warm traffic, you hit walls a lot more frequently, and you run into scenarios where you're like, what is happening? I scale and then it drops off, and now I'm in a death spiral. And by death spiral, I mean that you scale up, doesn't make efficiency, so you trim down, gets efficient, but then it keeps losing efficiency, and so you keep trimming it down further and further. So like I said, I don't want to be long-winded with this. We have evidence of all of this on our other channel called CProGrowth. it's C and then ProGrowth, so like the actual, letter C. And so check that out if you want. If you have any questions on this, like I said, I'm just trying to create this as a simplified view for you guys, to make it more easily digestible, because I know that when we're on the other channel, we're looking through all this stuff on a strategic standpoint and it can get a little bit confusing. So this is going to be kind of a recap of some of that, as well as some more insights for you guys to essentially take to your clients, and work on it, or your business, or if you're just, some random person that found this marketing page, you're already ahead of pretty much majority of people when it comes to digital marketing. So anyways, thanks again, guys, and I will see you in the next video.